Well, let's get started here. I know we're a few minutes after. Some people will probably join late, and that's okay. But we'll get going with announcements. So first up, the Illinois reboot is starting up again. There's been a couple. I think in 2021 they had two different groups that went through the course, and so they have openings for applications for the next couple weeks, and then it's going to start in late January. And this is really for folks that are trying to either further their technical skill set or kind of transition in the market to embrace a more technical role. So this is focused on Python projects. So I don't know if Kathy or someone else from Research Park wants to do an additional plug for this.
Hi there, sorry, Laura had an emergency, so she's not able to join today, but I did put a link in the chat if you would like more information about the program.
And I know, this is, certainly for folks that are trying to, build up their skill set. It's a good career development opportunity. I know they also in the past have looked for mentors to kind of help shepherd some of these students as they're going, or wherever people are at in their career, just to, hear about real world experiences, or even just, bounce ideas or things off someone who's maybe been through this more and has more experience. So if you're interested in a mentor role as well, I think that will be a need for this round. Okay, and then for DSEG, so we do not meet in January, so it's over the holidays, so we can all enjoy the holiday season and take a break in January. We'll be back on the first Fridays at noon in February. We likely still will be virtual unless some amazing things happen related to COVID, but we would probably stay virtual for the foreseeable future until things get closer to normal. Okay, so let's start with some trivia, and then we'll be discussing 2021 and looking ahead to 2022. So for trivia, you can see the Kahoot thing here. If you want to join it, you can go to kahoot.it and then enter the game pin. I will retype it again. And again, so if you've done this is just some fun trivia. This is not like a data science test. There's maybe a few technical questions. A lot of it's more random. So you likely will be guessing. And there's also no shaming here. So I think it only shows like the top 3 or 4 people. So if you're in last place, no one will know. So don't feel bad if you're like, I'm not going to know any of this. That's okay. So we'll give folks a few more seconds to join. Okay. So we'll start if you're still in the process of joining, it should still have the game pin up as we go through this. And the first question is kind of a test question in the sense of like, it'll get you familiar with the interface if you haven't done this before. So there's no points awarded for this. So the first question is, what month is it? So this will show you the interface. You see the question here that I'm sharing, but on your device, either on a browser or mobile phone, you'll just see 4 colors. So you want to press the color that matches with the choice that you want. And so you have, for each question, there's 20 seconds to answer. There is an incentive to, if you know the right answer, to answer quickly. So if you get it wrong, you get 0 points. But if you get it correct, you'll get more points the sooner you respond, if that makes sense. So you guys did a great job. I thought there might be a couple, I have no ideas, because December just started, so maybe people were confused what month it is, but that's fair. Well done. Okay. Let us move forward. What company built zero offload to enable and democratize billion-scale model training? So as models get larger, there's companies that are trying to actually make it more accessible for this to happen. So again, it's better just to guess. Even if you don't know the answer, it's better just to guess randomly than to not guess at all. Doesn't hurt to guess the wrong answer. If you still want to join, you can, in the bottom right, it shows kahoot.it and the game pin. So the correct answer is Microsoft. So Microsoft actually is the one that has been making that available. So yeah, Google, I probably would have thought Google as well. So reasonable choices. I make these questions hard. I'll be honest. I think if anyone gets more, I want to say there's 14 of these questions. There's 1 starter question. If anyone gets more than 7 correct, I'll be impressed. So I've thrown the gauntlet down. See if you guys can impress me. Okay. Next up, what animal species language are scientists using AI to decode? So they're actually trying to understand how animals communicate with one another. And humans were not a choice. This is more in the in the wild. Squirrels, whales, birds, or horses? Okay, so their answer is whale. Good job. Looks like you guys maybe were curious yourself how whales communicate. That is they have interesting language patterns. Well done. Abby and Kate are on top. They got the first two right. Well, we'll see if they can keep that up. Okay, what do the Open Syllabus project collect and visualize over 1 million of? This is kind of a large open data project that people are going to do some machine learning applications with. So what would the project's called Open Syllabus? So what could that be? So it was named that because, yes, you guys figured out it's college textbooks assignments. So basically what different textbooks were assigned to students, right? So they actually wanted to, do different algorithms around that. So they need to collect and visualize that data to do analytics for it. Okay, Abby has gotten all three. Okay, what technique did a researcher use to power autonomous navigation of stratospheric balloons? So this is a specific, technique in the data science world. So what did they use? And here's some visuals from their paper that they published. So, we know about the rise of self-driving cars, but now they're going to have self-driving stratospheric balloons soon. So the correct answer, they were all very interesting choices, but the correct answer is reinforcement learning. Okay, we have a new, so Leroy jumped to the top, but it's close. Okay, what company released a paper detailing switch transformers to scale language models to trillions of parameters? We just got to billions of parameters a few years ago. Now we're already up to trillions of parameters. So this was a little bit in the news at one point in the year, if you follow, kind of data science and machine learning blogs about what company, and this is a visualization from their paper. So one of the big companies, which company was it? Well done. It is Google came out with switch transformers. Okay, you guys are doing good. I would say you guys so far are doing better than I had thought. So you are impressing me. Okay, what organization built image classifiers to model wildfire risk? There was a lot of wildfires this year. So what group was actually trying to use machine learning to calculate risk? I try to make really good choices to trick people. So the correct answer is NASA. Looks like a good number of you got that right. Okay, staying close at the top. This is amazingly close, the top 5. Okay, what items did archaeologists train a neural network to sort? So archaeologists dig up artifacts. Now, what did they actually use a neural network to help organize further? You wonder, what area of life won't data science and machine learning touch? Well, it's touching archaeology. Correct answer is pottery fire. Look, wow, that was good. No one went with gold coins. Thought that might be a tricky option. Okay. Number 9, how much does it cost to build a neural pie box to simulate any guitar pedal using neural networks? So this is actually an out-of-the-box solution using hardware that anyone can get online, but how much would it cost to put this together? It is $120. Yeah, some people. Yeah, I think people probably thought it'd be the cheapest one, so that was a little tricky. It was the second cheapest option. $120. So, any of you guitar enthusiasts, you can look into that. It's a New Year's project. Okay, Eric jumps to the top. Okay, 6 questions ago. What organization launched their first AI/ML-based software as a medical device action plan? So this should say medical. It's a typo, not medial. So software as a medical device. I apologize. I will yell at my editors afterwards. It is the US Food and Drug Administration. So they actually have an action plan for AI ML-based software. Okay, Leroy back on top. What documentary used AI to make a generated version, a deep fake of a person's voice? So this is going to be an interesting trend, right? If Hollywood starts using generated content, so all of these were actually documentaries in 2020. I looked this up, but the right answer is Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain. Okay, Eric back on top. Okay, what organization introduced Triton, an open source GPU programming framework for neural networks? So again, this is a contribution in public space. So open source GPU programming for neural networks. I said the word open too many. That was too big of a clue. OpenAI. That is correct. Okay. 3 questions to go. What country set a precedent by deciding that AI systems can be legally recognized as an inventor in patents? So if you have an AI system that can generate its own content, that you could patent that. What country this year set a precedent? Australia is actually the country that allowed it. We'll see if other countries follow suit in 2022. Okay, Leroy back on top. 2 to go. What animals are scientists spying on in the wild using artificial intelligence? So this one has gotten more publicity than others. I'm sure there's, there might be a variety, but in terms of studying habits and different attributes of this animal species. Correct answer is chimpanzees. Yes, that they're using that to do all types of analysis in terms of just their routines, habits, relationships. Okay, looks like Leroy may have clinched first place with only 1 to go, but we'll see who else. So there's technically 3 spots on the podium, first, second, and third. If we were in person, I'd have prizes, but virtually the prizes are virtual, meaning they don't exist. So you're just playing for glory with this last question. What company launched an insurance product that leverages real-time driving behavior? So it's interesting to see a car company that was in the news for not only launching their own insurance product, but one that will leverage real-time driving behavior. Now you'd probably think of like, where would they get that data? It's a clue. The right answer is Tesla. So Tesla will take data from people who use their cars, and from it, they can price insurance. Okay, that is the end of trivia. Let's see who is on the podium. Third place, 9 out of, wow, that's impressive. Tech Boy got 9 correct. Also getting 9 correct is Eric. And then getting 11 out of 14 was Leroy. That's impressive. I mean, I had said people getting more than 7 would be hard. And then Michael and Yana got 4th of it. So great job. Impressive knowledge of data science trivia displayed there. So well done. Okay, well, we can move on now that we've learned a bunch of random facts from 2020. Let's look at some other things. We're going to look at predictions that people made a year ago about this year. And then we'll also look at some trends. So I'll go briefly through the predictions, mostly because they weren't that interesting or novel. So looking at the predictions that people made. So these are just things about, I think around big data analytics, things around, and again, these are so high level that it's hard to validate the predictions came true. I think a couple interesting things around big data and climate change. I think that, I know that's obviously in the news a lot. I haven't seen a lot of, at least in the data science ML space, a lot of conversion in that. So we'll see if that continues. Certainly NLP, I mean, I think it's been a trend for the last few years. So that continues to be, I think in 2021 that continued. Some things around data, actionable, accessible, cleaner data. I think those are obvious things that will continue. Some other strategic trends, Internet of Behaviors. So this, I know last year they predicted that it's different from Internet of Things, but actually Internet of Behaviors, that you would, take information and data around how people interact with the world and use that to influence behaviors. So I don't think I've seen it go this far, right? Like, I don't know maybe what applications they were thinking about. I think we're still a ways away from things around, facial recognition and even location tracking. I think there's, if anything, been more of a movement against that for privacy reasons. So I think this prediction hasn't, been realized. And as I'm talking, feel free to jump in on the chat, or, if you just want to jump in and talk. I don't think we've got, I think about 25 of us, so feel free to speak up or join in as we talk through these predictions if you have your own commentary. Privacy enhancing computation. So this, I do think, is coming more to the forefront. I don't think it's been fully realized, but I know in the online world that I live in, with the loss of identifiers on mobile devices and on browsers that's going away over the next couple of years, there has been a lot of traction, both in research and in industry, about how do you, things like differential privacy, federated learning, how do you really anonymize users but preserve information about them that could be useful just for a company doing their business, or for even sharing information with other companies, but leaving out who that person is. So I think this is definitely a trend that has come more to the forefront. And then AI engineering. So this is something that I really do see coming. If you follow, even job trends in the market, there is a lot more roles around ML engineering, ML ops. And I think that's a new thing in the last couple of years, right? In the past, you kind of had your traditional software engineer or a data scientist or even a data analyst. And now this kind of hybrid role of, really when it comes to large scale, this combination of software and ML to make things work at scale, that skill set is becoming more in demand. So I do see that. So those are some of the predictions. Some industry ones, and these were pretty high level. AI and machine learning will permeate new use cases and experience. I think that's obvious. We saw things like archaeology, zoology in the trivia. This does talk about this notion of no code automated machine learning. I haven't seen that come to the market fully yet, where it's really the citizen data scientist that you have an executive that can push a button and create a model themselves. I think that certainly it would be in the future, but I don't know if those have all come to fruition. Workplace AI, this said more than a third of companies in adaptive and growth mode will help with workplace disruption for both location-based, physical or human touch workers, knowledge workers working from home. I think there's some things around augmentation, around what does it mean to have hybrid work? And that's been a big theme in the world the last, really almost 2 years of what does it mean to stay in touch and stay connected, even if you're not physically there. So that's, something just for the workplace, I think that has happened. This mentions document extraction. I know, one thing that I've noticed is if I've had to sign a document during COVID, I don't have to physically sign it and scan it, right? There's now ways to, do that through automation where they can even do, different handwriting things. Return to work health tracking. I haven't seen any sophistication around that. I don't know if other people have seen that in terms of more of an AI ML thing around health tracking for folks. I think it's been fairly straightforward, at least what I've observed. There'll be more progress toward trusted data for AI. It's interesting. They mentioned that blockchain AI will start joining forces more seriously to support data provenance, integrity, usage tracking. I think everyone still knows that we want trusted data. I don't know if I've seen huge steps towards what that means or needs to look like. I think people would still say, yes, that is a top issue, that they want to make sure that not just trusted, but even ethics around data, that there's responsibility taken for how we're using data and algorithms. And I think that was it from prediction. So again, some of those are interesting to think about. Some of those are pretty high level, hard to analyze. Some trends, this is one of my favorite views, and you guys probably can't see that, it's an eyesore, but if you go to this Matt Turk website, every year he puts out this, and actually puts out, I think, a few different landscapes, but this is, if you can read the very small print, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data landscape. So this goes through kind of in the marketplace, like what are all the players and what solutions are they trying to provide? On the left, you'll see infrastructure. Then when you get to the middle, you have analytics and ML. And then in the right, you have applications for enterprise, applications for industry. In the bottom, you have open source, and then just even like data sets that are being shared. So this space of, how the world is converging around, data science, ML is touching everything. I think this is shown in just at all the players, right? Everything from the foundation layers and infrastructure, and then all the applications of where, solutions are being put. So yeah, again, if you want to drill into this, I find this interesting. You can go to the website, mattturk.com. And then he has, some interesting analysis of what trends he sees in 2021, like what really came to the forefront. One thing I will mention, the data mesh, I definitely read more about that. Our company has not gone to that, but it's really this notion of, instead of having kind of this whole, I guess maybe this enterprise-wide data lake, it's really this notion of you can actually have democratized data that you have maybe some central best practices around, but you really can let data sit where it needs to be for the business. So it tries to preserve some best practices around a data lake, but also flexibility and even speed, suiting business needs. I think that's maybe the only interesting one for there. But again, jump in if anyone else has comments. Here's some ML trends. Feature stores, that's becoming more prominent, I think, as people are trying to, reuse data for models. This notion of how do we store features that have been curated for a previous model, we want to use it for a future model. We already talked about kind of ML engineering, even model ops, AI content generation. This is something that, I think we've seen. We talk about deep fakes, but that's something that I think is becoming more prominent. And then this is talked about in another thing we'll go through, is just that the Chinese tech companies are really building some impressive solutions in this space, right? That they, I think historically the US had, your Google and Amazon and some of the research arms, OpenAI, that were doing things, but China really is having their own contributions in this space. In terms of IPOs, there's some big companies that IPO'd. Some market caps, some of these huge data companies, Snowflake, Palantir, Datadog, MongoDB, and those are big numbers, right? And these companies aren't even that old. So just to show you the big data, and most of these are more big data companies, and less about ML specifically, but it just shows you the amount of money that's valued out there. This was some state of AI stuff. The second one I think is obvious. AI first approaches have taken biology by storm. I think, with the need to innovate faster, given what's going on with the pandemic, I think it's accelerated innovation for new techniques that are AI centric. Transformers, we talked about the switch transformers. That's becoming more general purpose beyond even just NLP, which it was built for. They're noting computer vision, even protein structure. But yeah, the money's flowing, record funding into AI startups, right? They've been tracking that, and people are still wanting to invest in AI. Other things noted, that AI is now an actual arms race rather than a figure of one. I think you can look at the past decade, and some people think that AI and ML is just, vaporware. People like to talk about it, but now we're past that, and people are actually doing it, that there is applications in many industries that are adding a lot of value. And this, one thing is certainly in the military, and that's one where it's gone beyond just research, but even, the use of specific weaponry. And then mention too, China's ascension in research quality and talent training is that, China's really, if not on par, but even ahead in some cases in the AI/ML space. So I think that covers 2021. I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I do want to hear any thoughts, and folks can speak up or just type in the chat. What did you think? And even maybe think, looking at the things we just talked about, what jumped out at you? Or just what did you observe in 2021 that you saw change notably when it came to the world of data science? Any comments or reflections? And so Yanni, you chatted, big push on capturing and mitigating biases in AI/ML. Yeah, where do you? I guess I don't want to put you on the spot. Where do you feel like you're seeing that? Is that in academia? Is that in industry? Is that in kind of the media? Even highlighting where there's issues that companies screw up?
All of them. I mean, industries have gotten more sensitive to that. I think there were a couple of industry standards that came out over the last years, data sheets and model sheets for documenting data sets for machine learning and machine learned models in a way that are intentionally not machine generatable, even though you could do it, right? But they are intentionally non-machine generatable, such that some humans actually have to take the responsibility to reflect on their data and their models and answer some basic questions about fairness, accountability, transparency, ethics, responsibility. So that's a thing I saw pop up both in industry and academia.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder, it's interesting to think about how it has come to the forefront. And I wonder, a few years ago when the data privacy movement started and that resulted in regulation, things like GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California, and other countries now. I know Brazil has their own one that they launched. I know other countries, I think China had one as well recently. And PIPL.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
And it's interesting to think about, like, will there be a similar one about ML, right? About how, the boundaries or guardrails for how ML is used, if there actually be regulation around that in a few years, and if there's momentum for that. I don't know if anyone's in tune with that type of thing, but I'm just curious to see if that happens. So it looks like we got another. So Caleb put scalable AI and small data. Yeah, it's interesting to think about how, we talk about these trillion parameter models, but there's a lot of industries that, don't have terabytes of data, right? Sometimes it is smaller data. If it's because it's localized or just because there's not a lot of data, because it's using, small samples of individuals. If it's, in, let's say, very specific healthcare use cases where it's a sample of patients with a certain disease or some other use case. So it'll be interesting to see even technology wise, how smaller companies who have smaller data, right? If there's, solutions made for them, right? Because they don't need, these giant GPUs to train data. And Caleb notes, especially since COVID disrupted the types of data available. Yeah, certainly. And that, with data available, healthcare data, obviously there's a lot of sensitivity around privacy, but there is also I think we've learned the notion of instrumentation of data and even having clean data. That's just how important that is to do it. So I think, even thinking about it with COVID, how data is not uniform between different regions, even, locales within a country, of how you can track things to actually do analysis. So I think, it's interesting about scale, because I think, like, most focus has been in depth, right? That you can do AI/ML just with more complexity, this whole trillion parameter type approach. But I think maybe, Kill, what you're getting is the scale. It can also just be a wider scale that you can, maybe reach into more use cases that have less data, maybe more sparse data, that you don't need as complex a model, but just to handle those types of use cases. Other other comments or questions about 2021? Anything else about 2021 before we move on to look ahead to 2022? Okay. Let's look ahead. Let's see what the predictions are. I think we got 7 or 8 predictions that I pulled from a couple sources. So this is what folks are saying. AI will continue to improve, but humans will remain crucial. And it says here, while AI is likely to continue to develop, we aren't yet near the point where it can do what humans can. Organizations will still need data analytics tools that empower their people to spot anomalies. There's been some buzz the last couple of years, like data scientists will be obsolete in a few years because, that is, basically computers will run themselves, right? You won't need humans, but that does seem, one, I don't even know if that's ever realistic, because you need the human perspective, just to develop a use case or an application to point in the right direction. But this is really saying that it's not feasible that you remove the human out of the equation. It's really a partnership, right? Because the only way to make AI better is that there's humans involved in everything from labeling data to picking the right evaluation metric. So this makes sense. Oh, I missed a message. So Ken put the number of autonomous cars. I think that was, oh yeah, that's probably back to just a trend in 2021. Yes, that is a big success right now of AI, right? Is that autonomous cars are not abnormal, right? That it's accepted. Certainly there's a way to go before I think that's like completely mainstream, but it is, even in minor ways of lane assist and some park assist stuff. I mean, that's, we're getting closer and closer to that being full blown in our society. Yeah, and Sanford notes this ties back to Yana's point, mitigating bias. That's right. I mean, when we've seen issues in ethics playing with ML, it's been because human beings weren't there to fine tune the system, being that the features that were used to it, or just even just to recalibrate it in terms of how it's being evaluated. Okay, next up, predictive analytics is on the rise. I think this surprised me that they predicted this, because I always felt like predictive analytics, like that's been around for a while. But I think they're saying this is growing even more than it has, right? It's growing at around 25%. This is around thinking of like just forecasting, right? When you try to predict market trends, consumer trends, that they're saying, this is becoming more lucrative. Now, this seems fairly intuitive that this would be lucrative, but it seems like maybe it's more feasible that the technology and algorithms have caught up with what we want in this space. And so now the money's there. This is predicting cloud native analytics solutions will be necessary. So as legacy analytics solutions fall even further behind cloud native solutions that are continually being innovative, companies seeking to get the most from BI will shift to cloud native solutions. I see this. I mean, it's hard to deny the momentum of the big cloud offerings, right? You think in the US, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure from Microsoft. I mean, they keep expanding, right? If you hear about their numbers that they report, and some of them they do report formally at those companies' quarterly earnings. I mean, it's continual growth, and that more big companies, medium-sized companies are just depending on the cloud, and that includes things like analytics and ML. So this does seem to be reality, right? In the old days, I think you'd buy your own database servers, you'd have your own servers, and then you have like your Tableau license or what other tool you used. Now I think people are like, hey, I'm just going to throw my data in the cloud and do analytics there. That does seem to be a reasonable prediction. Self-service analytics is becoming more critical to business intelligence. So it's interesting because they call these self-service tools that allow non-technical business users to securely access and glean insights from data. I know in my work, we call a vein of this, we call it augmented analytics. And I do see that as a trend that's going to become more normal. So self-service, I don't know if that's the same exact as augmented analytics, this notion of, you know, when you visit an analytics tool today, right? If any of you have used, you know, a reporting tool to get data, it involves a lot of clicks, right? You got to click through the fields you want, the type of report you're trying to generate, and it takes time. And I think where this trend is what it's predicting is that you won't have to click as much. That when you go to a tool, the insights will be there already for you, or maybe it'll learn your behavior or learn what type of data is most novel and relevant, and it'll just display that. So that's how I think of augmented analytics. It's like it's reducing the number of clicks when you're trying to get data, or the number of queries, right? It's already there for you. So I think that's what this is trying to say as well. And they're saying it's on the rise because there's demand for more fact-based daily decision making, which I'm like, that's a good thing for any, you know, any company, organization to do, right? Is to make fact-based decision making. So I'm glad that that is in demand. That's a healthy thing for the world. Okay, data fabric. So I don't know if any of you have heard this. I've heard this word a little bit. So it provides a flexible, resilient integration of data sources across platforms and business users, making data available everywhere it's needed, regardless where the data lives. So I see this as like almost a, I don't know, a counterpart to a data lake, but almost as like a new interface layer that might live separate from the data lake that can be a hub for how you get data, both ingesting data and then connecting to data. So I think that's what this concept of a data fabric is. And so if you do think about data being spread out, you know, if it's even on cloud or on, you know, if it's your own hardware, this data fabric then can be this connective tissue to get people data wherever application's trying to use it. So this is saying this can reduce data management efforts by up to 70%. I'm just looking at it to see a chat. Yeah, AWS announced an English query tool for analyzing it. Yes, that is part of the self-service tools. You're right. I think we're getting back on the previous one. Is this notion of how you interact with data should be more of like, you know, how you interact with a smart device, right? Like I tell a smart device at home to turn on a lamp, or ask what the weather is, or ask what happened in a sports game. It either does things for me or it responds to questions. We should be able to ask the same of our data tools, right? To say, hey, you know, how much revenue did we make last week? Or, you know, what is the novel trends for this customer base? So, okay, decision intelligence. So there's a technology trend. Decision intelligence is a practical approach to improve organizational decision making. It models each decision as a set of processes using intelligence and analytics to inform, learn from, and refine decisions. And so it uses augmented analytics, simulations, AI. So this is suggesting, I think, just a trend of how decisions are made, right? It's almost like a new type of process involving data, involving augmented analytics, and even AI, where, you know, if you think about even big data, people would just make decisions using their gut, you know, just their intuition. Then there was a move to like, let's do fact-based. Now I think this is including even another layer where it's like, not even just facts, but also let's do like some AI, almost simulation to say, okay, what are possible outcomes? What are some percentages if we predict one path or another? So I think that would be, I mean, I haven't heard of this. It's interesting they're predicting this in 2022 to going this far, but that would be interesting, right? If you think about like a company's board or executive team, they sit down and they have a big decision to make. They have their preferences and opinions from their intuition. They also have data based on historical past, and they have simulations of the future that are AI based. That would be certainly an interesting trend. So we'll see. Autonomic systems. So this is self-managed physical or software systems that learn from their environments, dynamically modify their own algorithms. Have you heard of like self-healing devices? So this is, saying that this is going to come more to the forefront. I'd be curious I wish they would almost mention what applications they think this would, first take root in. I've heard of this talked about in notions of like cellular networks, some of those where they can self-heal, So I'd be curious, you know, how far reaching these types of solutions could get. I mean, it'd be good for like home appliances, right? If they would fix themselves, that would be super convenient, but I think we're a ways away from that. Okay. I think we only got a couple more. So then generative AI. So this I feel like is already come to some degree to fruition, right? But I think this is suggesting some new applications. It has the potential to create new forms of creative content, such as video, and accelerate R&D cycles in fields ranging from medicine to product creation. So, you know, we've heard, you know, we saw the example of AI creating a patent, right? That Australia was able to recognize that. But this is even just thinking of like the media world, right? You think of movies, TV shows. Could AI actually be the ones that generates storylines? You know, character, you know, dynamics, plot twists. I mean, that could be the case. I mean, we've heard of high-level uses of AI in terms of predicting categories of success in Hollywood or other areas. So could it actually create the content? That's the prediction. So that'd be fascinating to watch, like the first AI generated movie or cartoon. So Yana mentioned kind of the underlying idea of genetic algorithms.
Yeah, to your notion of generative AI, when we had our baby last year, we were joking that luckily there is at least no baby monitor that invents its own fables for kids. And we looked it up and we realized we were wrong. Yeah, actually, there are tools out there that give minimal input on what sort of an empathetic touch you want to have in your story. There's a program that will write you an Aesop-style fable with the desired empathic outcome. We were like, oh, all right, so this is not even new.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird. Like, I don't know if, I'm sure a lot of you on your, you know, on your mobile devices, you see like the smart reply, right? Where it like suggests things like that even feels a little weird. Like AI is telling me how to respond to another human being. But like those types of things, even just in interactions with people and even what the content we consume, it's going to become this blended world of like what was actually original versus what was generated by AI. So that does seem to be more the norm. Okay, I think we got one. No, that was it. So, okay, so that covered some of these predictions. So what do you all think based on the things we talked about, or just, you know, your own reflections, or even just the situation you're in, whatever industry or research you're doing? What do you think will be the most impactful trend heading in 2022? Maybe people don't want to think about 2022 yet. So I don't know. Anyone have any thoughts, ideas? So Yana chatted, the tech workforce making an effort to engage with the public in addressing concerns about AI. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, just from a transparency perspective is, yeah, what will industry have to do to make their consumers feel comfortable? So that'll be interesting to see what level of transparency, what level of detail will be required. And certainly once a couple companies lead the way, you know, they'll set the bar to some degree of what, you know, how much transparency. Caleb mentions maybe cloud computing, or maybe we're at the tail end of the cloud explosion. I certainly think, you know, even though that's, you know, it's been here a while, I think even more adoption and even, you know, I think one of the predictions was about more analytics in the cloud, right? The cloud native analytics stuff. And I think that's true, that people will put more of their data in the cloud. I think there's more trust. I think historically people are like, well, we can do certain applications in the cloud for elasticity purposes, but our core data, you know, for security reasons, we want to keep that, you know, on-prem just so nothing happens. But I think there's a lot more trust in the cloud and what it provides. Ken mentions more robots in the real world versus a factory setting. Yeah, I mean, you know, kind of the robot assistant in the home, right? I mean, we're not that many years off. I know Amazon, they came out with their robot, which basically is like an Echo that moves around in your house, right? So it doesn't actually do much. It supposedly can also be a home security monitor. It like walks around, but you know, we can't be that far away from, you know, different use cases in our home, in public space. I know, you know, I think on the U of I campus, I know other campuses have smart robots that are delivering food, right? They can actually navigate kind of mini cars that go around and deliver food. Looks like Sanford and Yana both put in more concerns about privacy and a way to opt out of data collection. Yeah, I will tell you, as working for a company that has to actually implement some of those solutions, I really wish there'd be more uniformity in it, because it's a pain to manage, especially if you work for a company that has data globally, to manage different types of restrictions and different types of consent policies. So it would be nice if there was some convergence, but it seems like if anything, it's going to diverge first. It's going to, more states, more countries are going to come with their own flavor, and then maybe over time there'd be an agreed upon set of policies. Yeah, the US, different states do their own things. Yeah, which is, I don't think that's happened yet. Does anyone else have something other than California?
Yeah, 2 more. There are 3.
In the same vein of CCPA,
Yeah.
or are they, okay.
Yeah, I looked them up. There is a nice map that visualizes which state is where. Like ours last fell through votes, but I'll post that in a second.
Yeah. Bob mentioned Tesla recently announced their robot, and they're a major player now with self-driving cars, trucking. This isn't directly related to science, but potentially maybe impactful. Yeah, if you think about, Tesla's valuation, right? It's gone in the last probably 5 years from people didn't know if it would make it to now it's one of the highly valued companies in the world. And so they're, that's, they're going to have influence, right? And they are leading the way with autonomous consumer vehicles and even for, a corporate use case as well. And so they're going to have, and the reason I mention this is because they're going to have money. They're going to have cash to find other applications, right? You think of back in the day when Amazon, I still remember when all they did was sell books and DVDs, and I was a customer of them. And who would have thought now all the different things they provide, right? And I think Tesla is only a couple steps away from leveraging their technical expertise for other things, with robotics, other autonomous use cases, right? Both for consumers and businesses. Yeah, this is great though. Good input. Other impactful trends that you see. I think one thing a little bit related to CCPA and the privacy stuff is I'm curious if we'll get to a point where people can opt out of ML. And not because it's necessarily harmful, but because they just are like, they're intimidated by it, right? So if you remember when a few years ago when like Facebook, people realized like Facebook had an algorithm, right? Like people always assumed Facebook, which at some point it did, it delivered exactly in your feed at a given timestamp ordering, like what other people you're connected with said. And at some point people realize like, oh, they actually have an algorithm that like pops up certain people based on what they think you'll like. And I wonder if more companies it'll almost be like a binary switch you can turn off. Like, don't give me recommendations, just give me the bare bones, like, the standard ordering, right? If there'll be almost like an opt-out button for ML being used for personalization or other types of, recommendations.
Hey, Matt. The problem with that one is that the legislators will require it without creating a proper mechanism for it. So, I can't see the companies necessarily doing that on their own, except for a handful. But I think to a large extent, legislators will try to force it to happen, but it'll be just like GDPR or California, it'll be all over the map and how it's actually implemented.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wonder though, because people got cognizant of how their data is being used. And then if they learn, then, they were given, an experience that was meant to be personalized, even if you're not using their personal data, but you can even personalize just based on what browser you're using or what mobile device you're using or what your geolocation is. Like at some point, like where's the line between data and ML? And so that's where will the CCPA, GDPR, will it just shift to ML as well? And I think that it's a lot harder to do that. It's easier to do it with data, right? It's a little bit more concrete than ML. I think, Yana, you mentioned it's still hard to pull data points out of trained models. Yeah, and how do you build applications that are personalized, but yet for some people aren't? And that's very challenging from a product development. So it just seems like consumers might go there though, right? If they've gone there for data, why wouldn't they go there for ML as well?
You're trusting consumers a lot more probably than they deserve.
Yeah. Any other trends for 2022? Well, I am hopeful in 2022 we have a rise of more in-person activities, right? I think there was a tick up in 2021, some normalcy, but not fully all the way. So hopefully in 2022 we can have an in-person DSUG if the pandemic cooperates. But I'm not going to make any predictions. I'm done making predictions about pandemics. So with that, thank you all for joining today and participating. This was just a very interesting conversation. Talk through the past year and look ahead as well. So yeah, we'll be back in February. So I hope you all have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in a couple months.